So Alfredi 2002 asked, "Hey Da Vinci, why do you think money printing causes inflation when quantitative easing is deflationary and the money created is being destroyed at the end?"
Okay. So let's get this separated. The two parts separated. One is there's what you might consider repo markets. That the repo markets, right? Although they were, it does get destroyed in the end because what they're doing is like, okay, they've removed the repo markets, so it's no longer there. With reason why is because they went to zero on the what's it called, the reserve requirements, right? The repo markets were there only because on overnight, but they didn't have enough money to bring down their balance sheet to a 10 to 1 ratio where, and you know what, for every dollar I have, for every $10 I've loaned, I have $1 stored in the Federal Reserve. Because they couldn't cover that going in overnight, right? So they'd have to go and borrow money to cover that during overnight, and that grew and grew and grew, right? That grew to trillions and trillions of dollars. Now, because that when that happens, right, when you go and borrow that money for overnight and then deposit it with the Federal Reserve, and then the next day withdraw that money from the Federal Reserve and then pay them back the Federal Reserve, right? It just seemed like so stupid, right? That money did get destroyed. But the quantitative easing that they're doing, right, which is buying government debt, right? The only time it gets destroyed is when the government pays back the money. So tell me, when have you seen the government paying back any of its debt in the last 100 years? Oh, that's right. They never have. That's right. They never paid any of the principal. Not once. Not once. So that's all printed money. And that doesn't get destroyed. So there you go. Right? That's coming in spades. Right? With Biden. Right? And then, of course, right, if businesses start to borrow money against their Bitcoin and then, continue to buy up their Bitcoin with the borrowed money, it becomes a cascading effect, basically, of destruction of the US dollar really fast. All right, next question.
Next question. So the next question is from Kev Allen, and he's asking if you have been watching Michael Taylor's interviews. This guy is really knocking it out of the park, presenting Bitcoin's value proposition to wealthy investors. What do you think about this?
Yes, I agree. I've watched quite a few of his interviews. He's an excellent, headman for Bitcoin, right? He's definitely a good person to put up in front and have talk about Bitcoin and Ethereum and really support the network. So growth, right? He's got a lot of good friends, wealthy friends, and people listen to him, and he knows what he's talking about. So I'm glad to have him on our side. I would have wished that Peter Schiff was on our side, right, from the very beginning, but yeah, you know what? Can't have everything you want, right? Alrighty, next question. Thanks, Kevin Allen.
Next is from the Heat. Sorry if I pronounced your name badly. And he'd ask, does the halving adjust to the Bitcoin supply if Bitcoin ever gets cracked?
Does the halving ever adjust if the Bitcoin gets cracked? Okay. So what he's asking, right, is if the crypto, if the encryption protocol, right, ECDSA or hashing protocol gets broken, right? Let's just start with the because there's two encryption protocols that are used, right? Let's start with instead of SHA-256, let's start with ECDSA, right? Where you know what, you know how you have your address, you have your private key, your public key, and so if If that gets cracked, where you could actually take somebody's public key and derive the private key, right? That's a hack, right? It's broken. That encryption is broken, right? If that gets broken by design, nobody. If you use Bitcoin properly, nobody could take your money, even though that's broken. You're like, what? Yeah, right? Because your address, right, is not your public key. It's a hash, a 256 hash, SHA-256 double hash of your private public key. Your public key is only known to the network when you spend the money from that address. So if you reuse your address, you're probably you're in trouble if you reuse the address and somebody could take your money. But usually when this type of encryption gets broken, it doesn't get broken like, oh my God. You press a button on any computer and you can see somebody's private key. No. The first time it gets broken, right? When it does get broken, it takes about 3 months, right, for just to break one person's private key. That would be the first case. Or maybe even 6 months or a year, right? Just for a computer system to do it. You figure out just one, right? That's considered broken, right? And so, do you think they're going to be able to rob everybody's money? No, they're not, right? It's just going to be a proof of concept, and then later on, obviously, people go, okay, oh well, it's possible, right? So don't leave any money in the same address over and over again, right? And then over time, we just replace that particular encryption. Now, if SHA-256 gets broken, there's a little bit more of an issue there, because what happens then, mining becomes very rapid, right? Which doesn't seem to make any sense. I wouldn't say that that's possible, because what SHA-256 is basically is a hash, and a hash is a lossful encryption, where if you take some sort of value, right, and you hash it, there's no way for you to go back the other way. Absolutely, there's not enough information in the hash to figure it out. You can only come up with multiples and multitudes of answers. Multitudes of answers, right? That's the best you could come up with, right? Millions and billions of answers to reverse a hash, right? So not only would you have to reverse, let's just say you reverse the hash, right, to get somebody's money, right? Because you have let's just say you have the ability to convert a public key into a private key. Well, then you need to get the ability to reverse a hash to get the public key. All right. So now that you've reversed the hash, let's just say you reversed the hash. The best you could do is come up with multitudes of answers. So then you have to test every single one to see which one's correct. Right? And so yeah, it's a task that is impossible to see both at the same time. So you don't have to worry about Bitcoin getting broken anytime soon. Alrighty. And besides the hash, the what's it called? The mining will probably just change anyways if if the hash can be discovered fast. So for example, when we find a new block, what we're doing is just hashing using a 256 hash over and over again, and trying to put a bunch of zeros in front of a specific number. And so if we could all of a sudden do that really, really fast, right, it will keep adjusting until you can, right? And if that's the case, if the case is that, well, there is no point where you can adjust it so that it can never never be hard, then we'll just come up with a new type of hashing algorithm. But again, that's not going to happen like, oh, tomorrow we now have a system that can hash really fast. No. It will be like, oh, now we have something that can hash pretty much, that can be exponentially faster over time. and then then we'll change the hashing algorithm. That's it.